Imagine being told you must choose between the family that built your entire world and the person who has become the center of your heart. Before this story unfolds, any further pause for a moment and think about what you would do in that position. Would you bow your head and accept the traditions that shaped your name, or would you stand up and risk losing everything for the one person who believes in you? Stay with this story until the very end, because what happened behind the golden doors of that lunar banquet is something the public was never meant to see. The night began like every other lunar celebration hosted by the Wong family. The mansion was glowing with warm lantern light hanging from ancient wooden beams that had seen generations pass beneath them. Tables were filled with carefully prepared dishes representing prosperity, harmony, and legacy. Business leaders, political figures, and respected elders sat in quiet conversation while soft music floated through the air. Every detail was perfect. Every guest knew that being invited to the Wong family lunar banquet meant you were witnessing one of the most powerful family traditions in the industry. But beneath that elegant surface, a decision had already been made. And that decision would ignite one of the most emotional confrontations the family had ever faced. Dylan Wang arrived later than expected that evening. Cameras had been waiting outside the gates, hoping to capture a glimpse of him entering the event. But something unusual happened. When the doors opened and he stepped inside, he was alone. Guests quickly noticed the absence of the one person everyone expected to see walking beside him. Shen Yue. Whispers moved through the banquet hall like a silent storm. Some guests exchanged glances while others quietly asked staff members what had happened. Dylan walked through the room greeting relatives and business partners, but those who knew him well could see the tension in his posture. He was smiling, but his eyes were searching the room as if he already sensed something was wrong. At the far end of the hall, his father sat at the head table surrounded by elders and respected members of the family circle. His expression remained calm and controlled the way it always did during important gatherings. But when Dylan approached and bowed respectfully, the air between them felt colder than the winter night outside. Dylan greeted the elders politely, then leaned closer to his father. "Where is Shen Yue?" The question was simple, yet it landed in the silence like a challenge. His father slowly lifted his teacup before answering. She was not invited. For a moment, the world around Dylan seemed to fade. The conversations, the laughter, the music, everything became distant background noise. All he could hear were those three words repeating in his mind. Not invited. Dylan straightened slowly. His voice was calm, but there was an edge in it that few people had ever heard before. "You removed her name." His father placed the cup down carefully, as if every movement had been rehearsed. "This banquet is a family tradition. It is not a place for distractions or unnecessary complications." The words were polite, but their meaning was unmistakable. Shen Yue had been deliberately excluded from the most important family gathering of the year. Dylan looked around the hall. Dozens of influential guests were watching them now, pretending not to listen, but clearly aware that something serious was unfolding. He leaned closer again. "She is not a complication. She is the person I choose to stand beside." His father remained unmoved. "You are thinking emotionally. A family like ours must think about reputation, alliances, and legacy, not temporary attachments." That sentence struck harder than any raised voice could have. Temporary attachment. That was how the family patriarch had chosen to describe the woman Dylan had defended countless times in public interviews and private conversations. For a moment, Dylan said nothing. His hands tightened slightly at his sides. Across the hall, a few younger relatives watched nervously. They had never seen father and son face each other like this. Finally, Dylan spoke again. "You blacklisted her from this banquet without telling me." His father answered calmly. "I protected the family." Dylan let out a quiet breath. The calm expression on his face had begun to fade, and something far stronger replaced it. "No, father, you protected your expectations." The room had grown silent now. Conversations had stopped completely. Even the musicians had lowered their instruments, unsure whether they should continue playing. Dylan stepped back slightly and looked around the hall filled with respected elders, powerful investors, and family allies. Then he said something that none of them expected. "If Shen Yue cannot be welcomed here, then this banquet has lost its meaning for me." Several guests exchanged stunned glances. Walking away from the Lunar Banquet was more than a personal decision. It was a symbolic rejection of tradition. His father spoke again, his tone slightly sharper now. You would walk away from everything your family built for someone who may not even stay beside you forever. Dylan answered without hesitation. What you built, father, was a name. What I am building is a life. The words echoed through the hall. Some elders shook their heads quietly, while others watched with curiosity, wondering how far the confrontation would go. His father leaned forward slightly. Think carefully before you make a decision you cannot reverse. Your inheritance, your position in this family, everything depends on loyalty to our traditions. Dylan looked directly into his father's eyes. Loyalty should never require abandoning the person you love. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then Dylan turned. Gasps moved through the hall as guests realized what he was about to do. He walked toward the exit. One of the family elders called out softly, telling him to reconsider, but Dylan did not slow down. Each step echoed across the marble floor as if marking the end of something far older than the banquet itself. Outside the mansion, the winter air was sharp and quiet. The lantern lights from inside glowed behind him like distant stars. Waiting near the gates stood Shen Yue. She had not gone home. She had remained outside, quietly refusing to disrupt the family gathering even though she knew she had been rejected. When Dylan stepped into the courtyard, she looked up surprised. You should be inside, she said gently. Dylan walked toward her. I already made my choice. She searched his face as if trying to understand what had happened inside those walls. Dylan stopped just a few steps away. They may control the banquet, the traditions, and the inheritance, but they do not control my heart. For the first time that night, the tension in his expression softened. And Shen Yue realized something powerful had just taken place. Behind them, the massive gates of the Wong mansion slowly closed as the banquet continued without its most important guest. But outside those gates, something far stronger than tradition had begun. And now the question belongs to you watching this story unfold. Did Dylan Wang make the right decision by standing against his own family to defend Shen Yue, or should tradition and legacy always come first? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over and your voice is part of the conversation.